I was never supposed to open the envelope. At least not yet. But on a chilly October morning in Asheville, North Carolina, something inside me said it was time. I'd been sipping lukewarm coffee in my home office, ignoring emails and watching the golden leaves fall outside my window when I saw it again, the envelope. Thick, off-white and sealed with the wax stamp of my father's lawyer. It had been sitting on my bookshelf for 2 years. To be opened only when ready, my father had scrawled in his uneven script across the front. He'd passed away unexpectedly in 2021, a heart attack while hiking the Blue Ridge Trail. A man who climbed mountains and left mountains of paperwork behind. I'm Emerson Quinn, 33 years old, oldest of 3, and the executor of my father's estate. I work as a contract analyst for a firm in downtown Asheville, but growing up I was always the one who acted like a lawyer, according to my siblings. No nonsense. Detail-oriented. Boring according to my sister Ivy. Ivy is 29. Bright, charming, impulsive. She teaches yoga and posts daily affirmations on Instagram like she invented them. She's the kind of person who forgets her car keys but remembers everyone's birthday. People adore her. My mother used to call her our little spark. But sparks can burn. When I finally cracked the envelope, my hands trembled like I was committing a crime. Inside was a letter addressed to me in my father's distinct, deliberate handwriting. The first few lines were tender. How proud he was of me, how much he trusted me. Then came the twist. If you're reading this, I've either died unexpectedly or you've decided to take early control of your share. Either way, you're entitled to disperse your portion of the inheritance now. You don't need anyone's permission. I set it up that way intentionally. I know you'll use it wisely. I read that paragraph 5 times. Then 10. My portion. Early. No permission needed. It didn't feel real. The full inheritance, split between me, Ivy, and our younger brother Caleb, wasn't supposed to be distributed until Ivy turned 30. That was the condition my father had put in place after his passing. But this letter changed everything. It was like finding a secret key to a door no one knew existed. I spent the next 3 hours rereading trust documents, checking dates, calling the lawyer. It was real. I could access my third. Nearly $380,000. And the first thought that entered my mind? I want to surprise Ivy. She'd been struggling. A breakup with her long-term boyfriend, late rent payments, mounting credit card debt. She didn't say it out loud, but I could hear the desperation between her laughs. I didn't want to flaunt it. I wanted to help. Quietly. Kindly. Like Dad would have done. But as I'd soon learn, Ivy doesn't see generosity as love. She sees it as leverage. And this gift would become the first domino in a chain of betrayal I never saw coming. I spent 2 weeks planning it all out. The idea was simple. I'd use a portion of my inheritance to pay off Ivy's debt and help her secure a small condo she'd been eyeing for months just outside of Asheville, in a leafy neighborhood near the river trails she loved. She'd mentioned it once over lunch, absent-mindedly stirring her iced matcha while scrolling Zillow. It's too nice for me, she said with a sigh, like wanting something stable was some kind of moral failing. I didn't say anything at the time, but I bookmarked the listing and saved the realty contact in my phone. Dad would have wanted her to have a place that felt safe. And I was tired of watching her spiral in and out of shared rentals, crashing on friends' couches, and avoiding my questions about late payments. So I arranged it all. Quietly. Carefully. I paid off her student loans, her credit cards, even the overdue parking tickets she'd been ignoring. Then I made a down payment on the condo under her name and had the realtor prepare a welcome home folder with the signed documents and a shiny brass key. I told her we were grabbing brunch at a new vegan cafe downtown. She showed up 25 minutes late, breezy and glowing like always. Oversized sunglasses, second-hand leather jacket she thrifted for $12, and combat boots that didn't match anything but somehow still worked. "Oh my God, I'm starving," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You look corporate." I forced a laugh. "You look like you broke into an indie band's closet." He smiled genuinely. "Thanks." We ordered lavender lattes and some overpriced beet toast, and I tried to keep the conversation light. We talked about Caleb, our younger brother who'd just moved to Seattle with his girlfriend, and how our mom was already guilt-tripping him into flying back for Thanksgiving. Ivy told a story about a dog who'd wandered into her yoga studio mid-class and ended up curled between 2 mats during savasana. Classic Ivy chaos. Charming and impossible to recreate. When the server dropped off the check, I slid a small envelope across the table. She raised an eyebrow. What's this? Did you get me a coupon for being only 20 minutes late? Open it. She tore it open lazily, expecting a joke. Then she saw the key. And the realtor's business card. And the note I'd written in Dad's voice more than my own. Welcome home, Ivy. It's yours. Paid in full. No strings. Just love. M. For a moment her face blanked. Like the world had frozen around her and she didn't know how to respond. Then came the laugh. A short, startled sound that didn't quite match the moment. Wait, what is this? A prank? You bought me a condo. I used part of my inheritance, I said, keeping my voice calm. I just thought, maybe this could give you a fresh start. He stared at me, jaw tight. I didn't ask for that. I know. But you needed it. She blinked slowly. So you opened your part already? You weren't supposed to. That wasn't the plan. I had Dad's letter. He gave me the choice. He said if I felt ready I could take it early. But why not tell me? Why make it a production? It wasn't a production. It was supposed to be a gift. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. Do you have any idea how this looks? She said sharply. You, coming in like some savior with your spreadsheets and your perfect little life, handing me keys like I'm a charity case? You don't think people will talk? I flinched. Talk about what? About how you bought your way into being Dad's favorite. About how you couldn't wait to grab your share. About how I can't even afford rent, so my big sister swooped in and fixed my life. Her voice was rising. People were starting to glance over from other tables. Ivy, I didn't do this to make you feel small. But you did. And you don't even see it. She stood up suddenly, knocking her half-drunk latte into my lap. She didn't even notice. The envelope, the key, still in her hand, trembled slightly as she gripped it tighter. I didn't ask you to fix me, she said, quieter now. And maybe next time you won't assume you can. Then she turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving me behind in silence. In a room full of strangers. With soggy pants, a cold latte in my lap, and a knot in my chest that felt an awful lot like heartbreak. I didn't hear from Ivy for 6 days. No texts. No calls. Not even a passive-aggressive Instagram story. I tried not to read into it. After all, she'd always needed space when things got emotional. But there was something different about her silence this time. It wasn't just distance. It was absence. And then the message came. Hey, I think we should talk. Can you come to Mom's this Sunday? That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a summons. It was strange that she wanted to meet at our mom's house. A place she usually avoided unless there was free food or a birthday involved. But I agreed. Sunday came fast, and with it, a cold drizzle that painted the windows in streaks as I drove through the winding neighborhood where we'd grown up. My stomach was tight the whole ride there. When I pulled into the driveway, I immediately noticed 2 things. Ivy's car was already there, and so was our mom's. Ivy hadn't said she'd invited Mom. Or that this would be a group conversation. Inside, the house looked just like it always did. Over-decorated, faintly smelling of lavender and lemon polish. Mom opened the door with her usual warm but wounded expression, like she was happy to see me but also vaguely stressed by my existence. Emerson, she said, pulling me in for a stiff hug. You look tired. Are you working too much again? Nice to see you too, Mom. I stepped inside and saw Ivy standing by the fireplace, arms crossed. Her expression was unreadable, but she didn't look mad. She looked prepared. That unsettled me more than anything. We sat. And then Ivy spoke like she'd been rehearsing. I've been thinking a lot about what you did, she said. And I realized something. You didn't just break the agreement we had about waiting to split Dad's inheritance. You broke trust. I blinked. It wasn't an agreement. Dad left us options. And you took control. Again. Mom nodded slowly beside her, saying nothing but clearly aligned. Ivy, I began carefully, I didn't take control. I tried to help you. I saw an opportunity to make your life easier and I took it. That's not control. That's love. She gave a soft, bitter laugh. Love with paperwork. And then Mom finally chimed in. I just wish you'd discussed it with the family, Emerson. Your father's estate was meant to bring us together, not give one of you a head start. A head start. I turned to her, heart racing now. Do you hear yourselves? This wasn't a race. I didn't open the account to win. I opened it to help. But it wasn't your decision to make, Ivy snapped. You made me feel small. Like I couldn't manage my own life. And now everyone's talking. I frowned. Everyone. I told Caleb, she admitted, then added, and he told Aunt Jeannie. And others. People are wondering why you're handling everything. Why you got your money early. Why you didn't include us. The knot in my chest twisted into something darker. She wasn't just upset. She was laying the groundwork for something. Why does it feel like this is about more than the condo? I asked. That's when Ivy pulled out a manila folder from the side table. She handed it to me without saying a word. Inside were copies of trust documents. Not mine. Not the ones Dad had given me. But altered versions. Pages highlighted. Notes in the margins. The formatting was off. Some signatures looked scanned. I recognized none of it. Where did you get these? I asked quietly. They were in the file cabinet in Dad's study, she said. After you moved forward with your share, I went looking. And I found discrepancies between what you say you were told and what's in writing. Mom looked away. That told me everything. Ivy, I said slowly, are you accusing me of something? I'm saying, she said, eyes sharp, that maybe you didn't just open your share early. Maybe you manipulated the terms to benefit yourself. Maybe you pressured the lawyer. Maybe Dad never gave you permission in the first place. Silence fell over the room like a weighted blanket. I stared at the folder in my hands. And for the first time in years I felt genuinely afraid of my own sister. Because this wasn't about inheritance. It wasn't even about money. It was about power. And she was ready to take it, no matter what it cost. I didn't sleep that night. The folder sat on my kitchen table like it had teeth. A quiet threat dressed in paper and ink. I must have read the fake documents a dozen times, tracing the inconsistencies, trying to understand how far Ivy had gone. How long she'd been planning this. I called Dad's lawyer, Miles Hannigan, first thing the next morning. Miles had been our family's estate attorney for over a decade. He was the one who'd handed me the original letter, the one Dad wrote by hand and locked in his office safe. The same letter that Ivy was now implying never existed. When Miles picked up, I didn't bother with small talk. Ivy's accusing me of forging Dad's instructions, I said. She showed me altered documents. She's telling people I manipulated the trust to take my share early. There was a pause. Then Miles exhaled sharply. I was wondering when this was going to happen. That stopped me cold. You knew. Not exactly. But she's been asking questions. Stopped by my office twice last month. Claimed she wanted to better understand the estate. But she was fishing. For what? To catch you doing something wrong. I told her the letter was authentic. That your disbursement was fully within the terms. But she didn't like that answer. So she created her own. I'm sorry, Emerson. I thought it would stop there. I hung up and just sat in silence for a long time. My apartment, normally my sanctuary, felt suddenly fragile. Thin. Like I was being watched from behind the walls. Later that afternoon I got a call from Aunt Jeannie. Jeannie was Dad's younger sister, the truth-teller of the family. Her bluntness was legendary. If someone brought store-bought pie to Thanksgiving, Jeannie noticed. If someone gained 10 pounds, Jeannie commented. She didn't do filters. So when she called, I braced myself. I just want to hear it from you, she said, skipping hello. Did you forge anything? Did you open your share behind Ivy's back? No, I said immediately. I have Dad's letter. The original. I have legal confirmation from Miles. Everything I did was authorized. Well, she said, her tone tightening, then Ivy's telling a very different story. And she's got your mom backing it up. Of course she does. My stomach twisted. Backing it how? She told me you pressured Dad into giving you early access. That you used legal language he didn't understand. That you manipulated him. Jeannie. I'm not saying I believe her, she interrupted. I'm saying she's working the family. You need to be ready. Working the family. That was exactly what she was doing. Planting seeds. Quietly reframing generosity as control. Turning a gesture of love into a narrative of greed. And worst of all, she was succeeding. I spent that night digging. Emails. Calendar entries. Voice memos from my conversations with Dad back when he was still alive. Anything that proved I'd handled things transparently. I didn't want revenge. I wanted protection. Ivy wasn't trying to reclaim her dignity, she was trying to rewrite history. The next day I got a text from Caleb. "Hey. Ivy says you're trying to shut her out of the estate. What the hell is going on?" I stared at the screen, stunned. "She's lying," I wrote back. "I didn't shut her out of anything. I tried to help. That's it." "I don't know what to believe," Caleb replied. "But you need to fix this before she goes nuclear." But it was already too late. That night, Ivy posted something on Instagram. A photo of an empty room, hardwood floors, white walls, a single houseplant in the corner, with the caption, "Sometimes a gift isn't love. It's control dressed up as kindness." Below it, hundreds of likes, dozens of supportive comments, people praising her strength, applauding her independence. I stared at that screen for a long time. She was painting me as a villain. Publicly. And if I didn't act soon, that narrative would stick. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I was going to find out how far she'd gone. And then I was going to show everyone. I always believed Ivy was reckless, not calculated. Impulsive, sure. Dramatic, absolutely. But strategic? That was new. After the Instagram post, everything changed. Friends started texting me vague messages like, "Thinking of you," and "Hope you're okay." Some didn't text at all, just silence where there used to be trust. It felt like I was losing control of my own story. I needed help. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, Logan Barrett. Logan had been one of Dad's business partners back in the early 2000s. He and Ivy dated briefly years ago. An absolute disaster, but Logan and I had always stayed on good terms. More importantly, Logan was a forensic accountant. When I told him what was happening, there was a long pause. Then he said, "You think she's setting you up?" "I don't know," I said. "But she's building something. She's crafting this version of me I don't even recognize. And I think she's trying to make it look like I manipulated the estate." He didn't hesitate. "Send me everything." That night I compiled every document I had. The original letter, the trust agreement, emails with Dad's lawyer, screenshots of Ivy's Instagram captions, even messages from Caleb. I included Ivy's fake documents too. 2 days later, Logan called me back. "There's something off about those papers she showed you," he said. "Page numbers don't match." The file was clearly reconstructed using a template, not from any legal drafting software. The signature on the final page. "It's not your father's. It's copied. Traced digitally." I felt sick. She forged it. She, or someone helping her, did. And it gets worse. I looked into property records. That condo you bought her? She transferred the title to someone named Thomas Delgado. 2 weeks ago. I blinked. What? Who's that? Her ex. A real estate broker with a disciplinary history. Emerson, she flipped the condo. My blood turned to ice. She'd sold it. Cashed out on the very gift she accused me of weaponizing. And handed it off to someone who had no business owning it. But why would she do that? I asked. Why pretend I'm the one trying to control her while secretly turning a free home into cash? Logan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because if she paints you as manipulative and controlling, then what she did isn't betrayal, it's survival." She was writing herself as the victim. Every lie, every post, every whispered conversation, it was narrative construction. Measured. And I'd walked right into it. That night I drove past the condo. The porch light was off. The windows were bare. A moving truck was parked on the street half full. It was empty already. Gone. I sat there in the dark, watching the hollow shell of what was meant to be a new beginning. And I made a choice. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because Ivy didn't fear confrontation. What she feared was exposure. She feared proof. So that's what I'd gather. Not just documents. Patterns. Intent. A story strong enough to unravel hers. One thread at a time. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the ending. This time I was writing it myself. I started with her Instagram. It was all there, not the lies themselves but the shadow of them. Photos from the condo. Captions about freedom, about choosing yourself. One video showed her popping a bottle of Prosecco on the back porch, laughing with someone just off camera. Not Thomas Delgado. Someone younger, maybe early 20s. Someone Ivy never mentioned. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the comments. One in particular, under a photo of her in the condo's empty living room, posted 5 weeks ago, right after I gave her the keys. At Ashleen Cray, girl, this space is so you. I can't believe it finally went through. Manifestation queen. Ivy's reply, told you I'd make it happen, winking face, never doubt a woman with a plan. Went through. Made it happen. That didn't sound like gratitude. Sounded like conquest. I reached out to Ashley McCrae, a yoga instructor Ivy used to work with. I asked her gently if she knew anything about Ivy's new place. She hesitated, then agreed to meet for coffee. We sat at a quiet cafe off Pack Square. Ashley looked nervous, like talking to me was breaking some unspoken code of loyalty. She said it was a flip, she admitted eventually. That some guy was stupid enough to give her the down payment in cash. She laughed about it. Said it was the easiest money she ever made. I stared at her, stunned. I was that guy. Ashley's eyes widened. Wait, that was you? I nodded. She looked genuinely horrified. I thought it was like a landlord situation. Some gross older guy. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That same day I called Logan. We need more, I said. I don't want just a paper trail. I want witnesses. Motives. A pattern. He put me in touch with a woman named Elaine Foster, a former friend of Ivy's, someone she'd fallen out with years ago after borrowing money and never paying it back. Elaine didn't hesitate. She uses people, she said plainly. Always has. She gets close to people when she needs something, plays the victim, gets what she wants, then ghosts. I gave her $1,200 when she was behind on rent. The next week she was on a weekend retreat in Sedona. And she didn't pay you back? She blocked me. Elaine had emails, texts, Venmo receipts. I documented them all. Over the next week I interviewed 4 more people Ivy had quietly taken advantage of. Former roommates. A barista she dated for a month, then left with unpaid utilities. Even her old yoga studio manager, who'd fired her after she started soliciting clients for private energy healing sessions and pocketing cash under the table. Every person told a similar story. She made them feel special, needed, important. Then used their generosity as proof they were trying to control her, just like she did with me. It was a cycle. And I was just the latest target. By the end of the second week I had a full digital folder. Screenshots, statements, transaction records, property filings, the forged documents, and Ivy's own social media trail. All of it backed a single painful truth. The betrayal wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. But I wasn't going to use this for revenge. I wasn't even going to confront her yet. Because if Ivy taught me anything, it's that narratives matter more than facts. At least until the facts are loud enough to shatter the fiction. And I was almost ready to shatter hers. It happened at Sunday brunch. I hadn't planned it. Not really. I'd been invited, reluctantly I'm sure, to a family gathering at my mother's place. A small affair. Mom, Ivy, Caleb, and my Aunt Jeannie. It was supposed to be a chance to reset, according to Mom's text. The kind of message that pretends to heal without acknowledging any of the wounds. But as soon as I walked in I felt it, the undertow. Like the house had been preloaded with tension, waiting for my arrival to trigger it. Ivy was already there, sitting at the kitchen island, a mimosa in one hand, sunglasses still on even though we were indoors. She looked like she was starring in her own private movie. She always did. Hey stranger, she said without standing up. Morning, I replied. The room quieted. Even the orange juice in the pitcher looked uncomfortable. Then she smiled. Glad you're here. I think it's time we cleared the air. Here we go. Mom glanced between us, wringing a dish towel in her hands. Ivy has some things she'd like to share, she said cautiously. And I think it's only fair we all listen with open hearts. I folded my hands. Of course. Ivy stood. She walked to the center of the living room like she was on stage. Like she'd rehearsed this. But she had. I just want to say, she began, that I never meant for any of this to get ugly. But Emerson made a decision that affected all of us. She took her inheritance early unilaterally and gave me something I didn't ask for. Then acted like I should be grateful. Ivy, Caleb began, but she held up a hand. Let me finish, she said. I'm not trying to fight. I just think it's important to call things what they are. Manipulation dressed as generosity is still manipulation. That word again. Manipulation. It echoed around the room like a gunshot. I exhaled slowly. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady when I spoke. May I respond? Everyone nodded. Even Ivy looking smug. I pulled my phone from my bag and opened the folder I'd labeled. Ivy, pattern of behavior final. And then I turned to Mom and said, I want to show you something. I began with the real estate records. Showed them the timeline, how I'd purchased the condo in Ivy's name, and how 2 weeks later she sold it to Thomas Delgado. I handed Mom the paperwork, the signature logs, the bank filings. Her face paled. I moved to the screenshots. Ivy's own captions and comments, her gloating messages to friends. Her brag about making it happen. Then the texts from former friends. The testimonials. The unpaid debts. The flurry of people who'd all experienced the same arc I had. Emotional pull, quick intimacy, unspoken expectations, and eventual abandonment. Ivy started to speak, but I cut her off. No, I said, finally letting the anger surface. You don't get to control this conversation anymore. Her jaw locked. But she said nothing. I gave you a home. You turned it into a payday. I gave you space. You turned it into gossip. I let you tell your version of the story, and you weaponized it. I turned to the rest of the room. I have spent my entire life trying not to make things worse. Trying to be responsible. Quiet. Measured. I tried to love Ivy the way Dad would have, and she turned it into proof that I thought I was better than her. No one interrupted. Ivy says I'm controlling, I continued. But control isn't giving someone a second chance. Control is what she's doing, rewriting history, gaslighting the people who love her, punishing anyone who refuses to let her spin her narrative unchecked. Mom looked at Ivy now, her expression hard to read. But Jeannie leaned forward and said simply, Is it true, Ivy? Did you sell the condo? Ivy's face twisted. That's not the point. No, Jeannie said, her voice sharp. That's exactly the point. Ivy's bravado began to crack. Her arms folded tighter. Her lips parted like she was about to deny it, then closed again. I needed the money, she said finally. I was drowning. You were given a life raft, I said. And you set it on fire. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Caleb stood up and left the room without a word. A door slammed down the hallway. Mom sat down slowly at the dining table, the real estate papers still in her hands. And Ivy just stood there, suddenly small, stripped of the performance, looking like a woman who'd just realized the audience had turned on her. I picked up my bag and walked to the door. Before I left, I turned and said, Next time you decide to write a story about me, Ivy, make sure it's not built on lies. And then I was gone. The house was silent as I closed the door behind me. But my mind wasn't. It buzzed, not with regret, not with adrenaline, but with something quieter and unfamiliar. Peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. Not for my success. Not for my boundaries. Not for the way I choose to show love. I drove without music, windows cracked just enough to let the autumn air in. Asheville's trees were beginning to shed their leaves, red, orange, golden little signals that even nature knows when it's time to let go. I had a voicemail from Caleb when I got home. Hey, he said. His voice was low. Heavy. I'm sorry. I should have asked more questions before taking sides. Ivy's not the person I thought she was. I get it now. Just wanted you to know I see it. I see you. Call me if you want. I didn't call him back that night. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I needed the silence more. I spent the next few days cleaning. Not just my apartment but my life. I deleted old threads. Archived emails. Cleared out a folder of saved Instagram posts and quotes I used to reread when I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I unsubscribed from people's expectations. And I made a list. A very short list. Things I will no longer apologize for. Being the responsible one. Setting boundaries that make others uncomfortable. Not shrinking myself to make others feel bigger. Then I made another list. What I want next. A weekend trip with no agenda. A therapist who doesn't speak in cliches. Real connection. Not proximity dressed up as loyalty. That last one stuck with me. Because that's what Ivy had offered all these years. Proximity. Not connection. She shared stories, meals, holidays, but never the weight of family. never the reciprocity. It had always been a one-way road, paved with guilt and glitter. And I was done driving on it. On Friday, Logan called. "Just checking in," he said. "Everything quieted down?" I smiled. "Quiet in the good way. Well, you've got a hell of a folder if you ever need it again." "I hope I never do." There was a pause. Then he said, "You know what you did, telling the truth like that in a room full of people who didn't want to hear it. That's not easy." "I know," I said. "That's why it felt so good." He laughed. "So, any plans for the inheritance now that your sister flipped her share into an ethics disaster?" I thought for a moment. Then said, "I think I'm going to invest in something I can actually trust." "And what's that?" "Myself." It's been 3 months since the brunch. Since the moment Ivy's story fractured in front of everyone, splintering under the weight of facts she couldn't manipulate. We haven't spoken since. He tried, once, a single text that read, "You didn't have to humiliate me." I didn't respond. Because humiliation wasn't the point. Truth was. And truth doesn't humiliate. It liberates. Caleb and I met for coffee 2 weeks later. It wasn't awkward. His pause. Like two people trying to find their way back to a language they both forgot. He apologized again. This time more sincerely. "I think I believed Ivy because it was easier," he said. "Easier to think you were the one messing up, not her." "I get it," I told him. "She's magnetic. But magnets pull on everything, even things trying to stay still." We've stayed in touch. Not every day. Not as siblings tied by obligation. But as people who are finally learning to show up by choice. As for Mom, she hasn't apologized. But she sent a card. No return address. Just 4 words inside. I should have asked questions. It wasn't everything I needed. But it was something. And sometimes something is enough to keep a door unlocked, even if you're not ready to walk through it yet. I took time off work. Not because I burned out, but because I didn't want to. I spent a weekend in Vermont. Alone. I turned off my phone, hiked without a map, read novels I never finished in college, and cried once, in the middle of a trail. Not from sadness but from the deep, aching relief of being free from people who loved me conditionally. When I got back, I looked at my bank account. There was still plenty left from the inheritance. I didn't touch it for a while. Then I used a small piece to fund a local nonprofit that offers housing and career services for women leaving coercive relationships. Financial, emotional, familial. People like Ivy don't always look like abusers. Sometimes they wear yoga pants and smile as they cut you down with words like ungrateful or dramatic. But the damage they cause is no less real. I told the nonprofit to keep my donation anonymous. I didn't want a plaque. I just wanted to break the cycle. Last weekend I moved. Nothing drastic, just across the city. A sunlit 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with a balcony that overlooks the park. The kind of space that feels like a fresh chapter. I didn't tell anyone the address. Not out of spite. But because this part of the story is mine alone. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't have to burn bridges to walk away. You just have to stop building them for people who only cross when it's convenient. I used to think family was everything. Now I know the truth. Family is not who shares your blood. It's who shows up when there's nothing left to gain. And from here on out, I only open my door for them.